She lost everything but never imagined her life would change forever, with just one look. In a modest village surrounded by low mountains and fruit trees grew Temilade, a girl with watchful eyes and a quietly brave soul. From an early age, she knew that life would not offer her golden trays or easy promises. She didn't have expensive toys or new clothes each season, but she had something that few children her age possessed, a sense of early responsibility and a quiet strength inherited from her parents. Her childhood was made up of afternoons sitting by the river, listening to her mother's advice, and mornings helping with simple chores, like sweeping the yard or fetching water from the community well. Simplicity framed her existence, but within it pulsed the spirit of a girl who would soon understand the weight of the word sacrifice. What Temilade didn't yet know was that destiny was about to place her before the first major turning point of her life. When she turned 10, an unexpected event completely changed the dynamics of her home. Her father, the sole provider of the house, suffered a tragic accident while working with wood in the neighboring region. The news came like thunder on a clear day. Uchenna, her mother, collapsed in silence. Her once steady gaze became lost, almost vacant. How would she carry on now, with a young daughter and no source of income? The nights became long and heavy, and Temilade, even though just a child, could hear the muffled sobs of her mother coming from the next room. The floor of the house was made of clay, but the pain that covered it felt like stone, cold, unmoving, impenetrable. The sadness was intense, but it did not linger passively. Temilade was not the kind to wait for miracles. She thought, observed, connected small things as if they were clues to something greater. One cloudy morning, sitting in the backyard, she noticed something that almost no one else did. The tall and robust banana trees her father had planted long ago when life still smiled. They stood there, firm, heavy, with thick bunches, almost ready to harvest. The image stirred something inside her. It was as if her father's voice echoed silently through the leaves. Everything you need is already before you. Her eyes lit up, and an idea was born right there, under the grey sky and among the green branches. She would sell bananas at the village market. It would be her way to contribute, to not let her mother carry the burden alone. Datu, you also believe that small actions can change destinies? Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. Stories like Temilade's deserve to be lived until the end, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. When she told her idea to Uchenna, she expected a scolding or a disbelieving laugh, but instead she saw something in her mother's eyes that she hadn't seen in weeks. Pride, a silent, almost shy pride, but strong like the trunks of those very banana trees. Uchenna hesitated at first, thinking it was all madness. After all, her daughter was just a child, and the market was a bustling place, full of adults who barely noticed the little ones. But faced with Temilade's conviction and determined gaze, she gave in. She helped her daughter cut the ripe bunches, selected the best fruits, and even improvised a little basket made of straw and old fabric so the girl could carry everything with dignity. It was a symbolic gesture, but filled with faith. The path to the market felt longer than ever. The basket on her head weighed less than the butterflies in her stomach. Temilade felt her heart beating like a festival drum, even without knowing if there would be any reason to celebrate. People looked at her in surprise. After all, it wasn't common to see such a young girl walking alone with such a big load. When she reached the entrance of the market, she paused for a few seconds. The sound was deafening. Mixed voices, vendors shouting offers, chickens running around, and the smell of spices in the air. She picked a little spot next to an old lady selling cassava, took a deep breath, and began. Sweet bananas, fresh bananas, just for today. At first, few paid attention, but something in her voice, or perhaps the determined sparkle in her eyes, began to draw glances. A man with a white hat stopped, then a woman with a baby in her arms. In less than an hour, she had already sold almost half, and then came what she hadn't expected. A man asked for all the remaining bananas to make banana candy for his shop. Temilade tried to negotiate, but he paid the full price. It was as if the universe had tested her courage and was now rewarding her. When she counted the money, her eyes filled with tears, not because of the amount itself, but because of what it represented: dignity, hope, a breath of the future. She ran back home, her heart bursting with joy and the basket as light as a cloud. When she entered, she shouted for her mother. who came running thinking something was wrong. But when she saw the smile on her daughter's face and the money in her small hands, Uchenna couldn't hold back her tears. It wasn't just the money, it was the rebirth of hope in the form of a child. That moment, simple in the eyes of an outsider, became a milestone for both of them. But little did Temilade know that this small act, that seemingly ordinary banana sale, was about to change the course of her life forever. With the money from her first sale, Temilade could have bought sweets, new clothes, or any typical treat for a child, but she wasn't an ordinary child. With her small hands, she decided that part of that money would be used to buy rice, oil, soap, and a bag of beans. The basics for her and her mother to get through the next few days without going hungry. The rest, she carefully saved inside a rusty metal box she had inherited from her father. That moment marked what many would later call her first seed of entrepreneurship. She didn't yet know what it meant to invest, but she sensed that money could multiply if used wisely. And so she bought more bananas from an old woman in the village, known for always having ripe and sweet bunches. It didn't take long for Temilade to be back at the market, this time with more goods and even more determination in her eyes. The days that followed felt like magic in slow motion. With each market day, more customers came. Some bought, others simply praised her courage. "That girl has a future," they said. Soon the neighbors started calling her Temi of the Bananas. The nickname, which could have sounded childish, became a symbol of admiration. It was common to see her, still in her school uniform, with the basket balanced on her head, walking confidently between the stalls. And the most impressive thing was that she managed all of it without neglecting school. She studied at night, by the faint light of a makeshift oil lamp crafted from a bottle, while her mother dozed beside her. She dreamed big, even though the ground beneath her feet was made of packed earth. At 17, Temilade was already a role model for the entire community. Her stall at the market had grown, now covered with a colorful canopy that shielded her from the harsh sun, and her name was known even in neighboring villages. She didn't just sell bananas, she also gave empathy, gratitude, and respect. Always smiling, it was common to see her offering an extra bunch to the elderly or saving the ripest fruits for children who had no money. Behind that success was the girl who never forgot where she came from, nor for whom she fought. Her mother, Uchenna, who remained her safe harbor. It was around that time that she met Tarik, a young man from the village, handsome, kind, and always very helpful. He came from a seemingly respected family, helped his father in the fabric store, and had a reputation for being polite. In the early months, he was as sweet as the sweets Temilade never had in childhood. He would walk her home after market days, bring her small gifts, and often said things like, "You're different from all the others." Everything seemed perfect, as if, after so many years of hard work, life was finally offering her a little affection, something Temilade never knew how to ask for, but always deserved. And it was precisely that hidden longing, masked by her armor of independence, that drew her closer to him. But over time, the sweetness turned bitter. Tarik began to show subtle signs of control. First, he suggested she wear less revealing clothes at the market. Then he criticized the way she spoke to customers, especially the men. He started showing up unannounced, watching her from a distance, suspicious. Soon, affection gave way to jealousy, and jealousy turned into harsh words. One Sunday, he grabbed her arm tightly after a trivial argument about her wanting to study in another town. She remained silent, as many do in the beginning, but inside, something began to break. Love wasn't supposed to hurt, and she knew that. The decision to end it was as hard as selling her first banana. She was afraid of loneliness, of retaliation, of what others would say. But above all, she feared losing herself, and that she would not allow. One day, with a firm voice and a trembling heart, she looked him in the eyes and said, "Tarik, it's over." He laughed, thinking it was a bluff. He tried to manipulate, cried, begged, threatened, but she had already made her choice. She put an end to it and moved on. For the first time, not for her mother, not for the stall, not for the customers, but for herself. And that made her stronger than any victory at the market. Temilade thought she had faced the worst, but fate, always full of sharp twists, was preparing something even more devastating. On a stuffy afternoon, after a long day of work, she walked home with tired shoulders and a mind full of numbers and plans. She dreamed of expanding the stall, maybe opening a small shop. She even had a notebook where she wrote down ideas for new products. Arriving at the wooden gate, She pushed it open with one foot and entered the same small yard as always. Everything seemed normal until she opened the living room door and her world stopped. There on the cement floor lay Uchenna, lying on her side, eyes closed, her skin far too pale. The pot on the stove was still warm, and a dish towel had fallen beside the table. At first, Temelaide thought her mother had simply fainted. She ran to her, shouting her name, shaking her shoulders, trying to wake her with frantic words. "Mama, it's me, Temi. Wake up, please." But there was no response. The body was already cold. Uchenna's soul had departed, silently, in the middle of an ordinary day, as if life had decided to take away the one person Temelaide wouldn't know how to live without. She didn't cry immediately. She stayed there on her knees, holding her mother's hand, trying to figure out what to do. It was as if time had frozen, and all that existed in the world now was that small body stretched out on the floor. No memory, no word, no lesson seemed enough to prepare her for that moment, and the pain, that sharp, immense pain, came from within, breaking apart every last piece of the girl that remained. The news spread through the village like fire in dry grass. Everyone was moved. Neighbor, friend, hard-working woman. Uchenna was all of that. The market fell silent the next day. Many came to the funeral, with teary eyes, holding fruits as symbolic offerings to the girl who was now alone in the world. But even surrounded by people, Temelaide felt an emptiness that no word, hug, or prayer could fill. For the first time, she didn't know how to respond. For the first time, she didn't know what would come next. Grief was silent, and in the days that followed, she was not seen around the village. The bananas ripened at the stall, the leaves dried up, and the dream notebook remained closed on the table. But fate, as cruel as it was unpredictable, wasn't done with its plans for Temelaide. Because although she thought everything was over, something or someone was about to enter her life and change everything once again. What if it were you in Temelaide's place? What would you do now? Losing someone so important can change everything in a person's life, so leave a comment. Stay strong, Temelaide. Grief had left deep marks on Temelaide, not just in her heart, but in the features of her face, in her once bright eyes, now dull, and even in the way she walked, slower, more dragging. The house, once filled with her mother's sounds, now held a bitter silence. For days, she stayed locked inside, too weak to go out, even refusing the smell of ripening bananas on the porch. But at some point, deep in her chest, something ignited. The memory of Uchenna's voice telling her she was strong, that she couldn't give up. It was as if her mother was still there, whispering courage from somewhere else. And it was for that memory that morning, Temelaide got up, tied her hair, put on her long skirt, and picked up the basket with the few bunches that remained. She had to start over, for herself, for the unspoken promise to keep going. The market was as always, noisy, full of voices, laughter, and the clatter of pots in the distance. But for Temelaide, everything seemed more muffled, slower. The sun had already been burning since early morning, and her forehead sweated under the floral scarf. Even so, she arranged the bananas on the stall with precision, just as her mother had taught her. She separated the greener ones, stacked the ripe ones, and placed the prettiest ones at the front, the ones that caught the eye. Even with sadness clinging to her body, she forced a smile for each passing customer. It was a shy smile, but genuine, and that was enough to captivate. Sweet bananas, fresh ones. "Come and get them," she repeated, even with her throat tight. Deep down, each sale was a step toward healing, even if she didn't realize it yet. And then it happened. In the middle of the morning, amid the constant flow of people coming and going, a large, shiny black car parked right in front of her stall. The engine stopped, and the dark windows slowly rolled down. For a few seconds, time seemed to stand still. Other vendors paused. Some even stopped their conversations. "Who could that be?" they whispered. "Look at that car. Must be a politician or a businessman from the city." Temelaide narrowed her eyes. A vehicle like that was not common around there. She straightened up, adjusted her scarf with her fingertips, not knowing what to expect. Then the door opened, and out stepped a tall man in a light grey suit, immaculate shoes, and a presence that seemed to command the space without saying a word. Temelaide's heart raced, and she swallowed hard. The man approached calmly, his eyes fixed on her. He had brown skin, well-groomed hair, and a serene but firm gaze. He stopped, in front of the stall, leaned slightly forward, and with a discreet smile said, "Are these bananas sweet?" The question, so simple, caught her off guard. She stammered for a second, then answered, "Yes, sir, very sweet." "Then pick out the sweetest ones you have for me," he said with the same calm tone. She began to count the fruits, still not fully understanding what was happening. Never before had a man like him, so polite, so well-dressed, stopped to buy something from her, much less with that respectful tone. Usually men like him walked by quickly, without looking around, as if they didn't see the ones selling on the street. But this man not only saw Temelad, he was watching her intently, and she felt it. "Do you work here every day?" he asked, watching her movements. "Every day," she replied softly, avoiding direct eye contact. "I admire people who fight," he said with a slight nod. "You deserve the world." Temelad felt her chest tighten. She wasn't used to this kind of kindness. Not since her mother passed. It was as if someone had finally stopped to see beyond the banana stall. As if, for a brief moment, she was no longer just another street vendor among many. She finished wrapping the fruit and held out the paper bag to him, quickly calculating the price. "That'll be 1,500 naira, sir," she said politely. He calmly took out his wallet and, without saying a word, placed a folded note in her hand. When Temelade unfolded the money, her eyes widened. It was 10 times the price of the bananas. She looked up, shocked. "Sir, this is wrong. You gave me way too much." She stepped out from behind the stall to call him, but he had already gotten into the car. He honked twice, gave a brief wave and drove off, leaving behind the faint scent of woody cologne and a trail of questions in Temelad's mind. Why would someone do that? Why would he just disappear without hearing what she wanted to say? That gesture, simple on the surface, seemed to hold something more, a hidden purpose perhaps? Or was it just charity? The young woman returned to her stall, still holding the money in her hand, her heart pounding, and a strange feeling in her chest, as if that encounter hadn't been the end, but just the beginning. Has something like that ever happened to you? Or what would you do if you were in Temelad's place? The next morning, the sky was still covered by a light mist when Temelad arrived at the market. The air was cooler. She felt strange, not bad, just different, as if something was about to happen. She arranged her bananas with the same care as always, wiping each fruit with a damp cloth and stacking the ripe bunches at the front, creating a yellow mosaic that caught attention from afar. She didn't expect to see the man from the black car again, but just before 10 in the morning, the familiar sounds of the market were interrupted by a familiar noise. The quiet engine, the tires rolling gently over the gravel. The black car was back. The other vendors, already used to the market routine, didn't hide their curiosity. Some even stepped out from their stalls to get a better look. Murmurs rose. "Is it the same man from yesterday?" When the car parked, the door opened with the same elegant slowness as the day before, and Kailin, now she knew his name, stepped out with a gentle smile on his face and the same calm demeanor. He brought no rush, no arrogance, only presence. He walked to the stall, like someone familiar with the ground, yet still looked with respect. And when he stopped in front of her, time seemed to slow down. "Good morning," he said, in a deep and kind voice. "Do you have more of those sweet bananas?" "Yes, sir," Temelada replied. "I have the best ones today." She began to pick out the fruit, this time with even more care. Kailin watched her in silence, and although he didn't say much, there was something in his eyes, a kind of discreet but intense admiration. He didn't seem to be there just for the bananas, and she could feel it, though she didn't quite know how to handle it. When she finished wrapping them, he paid the exact amount this time, then began chatting with the beautiful young woman in a natural way. He was very kind and didn't seem as wealthy as he looked. Kailin was a different kind of man. At 29 years old, he had recently inherited his father's businesses and land, a respected merchant from the neighboring village. Despite his wealth, he had never cared for luxury. He drove himself, wore clean-cut suits without much flash, and was known for greeting employees by name, knowing the routines of market vendors, and helping struggling families in the region anonymously. Many said Kailin was the rare kind of man who, despite being able to have everything, chose to live simply, and perhaps for that very reason, he was so desired, especially by families who dreamed of marrying off their daughters to a respectable heir. The problem was, Kailin could see through the smiles. He had tried 3 relationships in the past 2 years, all with young women who at first seemed charmed by his personality, but after a few months, their true interests surfaced. Questions about money, inheritance, travel, properties. He always felt like just a bank account disguised as a man, so he decided to change strategies. He stopped attending fancy dinners and began frequenting places where few men of his status would go: markets, remote villages, fields. It was during these discreet wanderings that, among many markets and ordinary faces, his eyes landed on Temilade, and something stirred within him. That first day, he didn't want to say much. He just watched. The way she spoke to customers, how she smiled sincerely despite the sadness in her eyes, the care she gave to each bunch of bananas as if it were a treasure, and most of all, the way she refused the extra money. That moment stayed with him the entire night. A girl like that isn't easy to find, so he decided to return. He needed to confirm if it was real, and upon seeing her again, he was sure Temilade was different from all the others. "Can I ask you a question?" he said, breaking the silence. "Of course," she replied cautiously. "Do you have family? What brought you here?" Temilade took a deep breath. That question, coming from a stranger, was deeper than it seemed, but something in it made her answer truthfully. "I started selling out of necessity. Then it became purpose. Every banana sold was a way of not giving up on my life." Kayleen nodded, serious. Those words touched him more than he let on. They talked for a few more minutes about the market, the weather, and childhoods in distant villages. But in every word, an invisible bond was forming. When he finally said goodbye, he left a question hanging in the air. "I'll be around tomorrow. Will you be here too?" "I'm always here," she replied, trying not to smile too much. And he left, this time more slowly, like someone already planning to return. That night, Temilade couldn't sleep well. She kept replaying the conversation, every detail of Kayleen's face, the respectful way he looked at her, different from anything she had ever felt. At the same time, fear was there too. After all, she had been hurt before, had been deceived by appearances. And now, a man so far from her world seemed interested in her. Could it be real? Or was it just another game? A whim of someone who could have everything? The next day, long before the sun rose, she was already up, combing her hair more carefully, choosing the blue scarf, her mother's favorite, and setting aside the best bananas she had saved. If you also think Temilade deserves to live a true love story, leave a like now, because sometimes the world is too harsh on those who only wanted a little peace. And a simple gesture from you can show that she's not alone in this journey. From a discreet corner, almost invisible in the shadows cast by the market's colorful tents, a pair of narrow, inflamed eyes watched Temilade's every move. It was Tarek, thinner, his face covered by an unkempt beard, and his gaze darker than ever. He was no longer the same young man who once charmed the girl with sweet words and promises of a peaceful future. Time had hardened his features and fed his bitterness. Seeing Temilade smiling again, even with the timidity of someone still healing, stirred something in him in a nearly sick way. And what hurt him most wasn't the end of the relationship. It was not being the reason for that new light in her eyes. The black car, imposing, caught his attention immediately. Tarek stepped back slightly, peering from behind a vegetable stall. He watched closely the man getting out of the vehicle. Well-dressed, polite, walking calmly toward Temilade's stall. She, always polite, lifted her face and greeted him with a smile. And it was in that smile, that small, almost imperceptible lift of the lips, that Tarek felt his stomach turn. He felt as if something precious was being stolen from him, as if an intruder was trying to take what, in his distorted mind, still belonged to him. "So that's the guy," he muttered, eyes narrowed. "A spoiled little rich boy." He watched how Kaylin spoke to her. There was no harshness, no superiority, no apparent hidden motives. It was the kind of respect Tarek never knew how to give, and that irritated him more than he wanted to admit. To him, women were to be led, controlled, molded, and Temilade, with her audacity to leave an abusive relationship, challenged everything he believed it meant to be a man. It was that wounded pride, that sense of irreversible defeat, that fed the fire now burning inside him with almost insane intensity. That night, lying in his hammock, Tarek couldn't sleep. The sounds of the market, Temilade's laughter, Kayleen's wave, all echoed in his head like a constant buzzing. The image of the two of them talking in front of the stall tortured him. He closed his eyes and saw Temilade laughing with another man, handing over her bananas gently, just as she used to do with him. Jealousy mixed with rage, and rage turned into obsession. In a silent outburst, he got up, paced back and forth in the small room he lived in, and muttered to himself, "If she won't be mine, she won't be anyone's." That night, Tariq made a promise, a vow whispered into the void, fists clenched, eyes red with resentment. He began to plan, still disorganized, a way to open Colleen's eyes and ruin any chance the two had of forming a relationship. In the days that followed, he began hanging around the market more frequently. In disguise, he stayed among the vendors, pretending to buy something, always watching. He saw when Colleen brought a bag of fruit and handed it to Temilade as a gift. He saw her laugh, shyly, glancing around as if not wanting to attract attention, and that was enough to fill his chest with fury. What once was just envy now became a mission. Tariq didn't just want to interfere, he wanted to destroy what was growing there. He planned to create a scandal and tarnish the girl's reputation, but he couldn't find or think of anything to incriminate her. The problem was, the more he searched, the more frustrated he became. There were no scandals, no lies, no dark past. Temilade was, in fact, someone of integrity, admirable, and that only increased his hatred. Because to Tariq, Temilade's mistake was never cheating, lying, or manipulating. It was simply moving on, finding peace without him, happiness without his permission, love without his presence. And that was the wound he couldn't heal. Because deep down, he knew the problem wasn't Colleen, it was himself. But like many men consumed by obsessive delusions, Tariq refused to look in the mirror. Have you ever met someone like Tariq? The kind of person who can't accept that you've moved on? Comment below. What would you do if you were in Temilade's place? The day dawned with a deep blue sky. The market buzzed as always, but there was a different sparkle in Temilade's eyes that morning. Maybe it was Colleen's presence, maybe the unexpected gesture of kindness the day before, or maybe something greater was beginning to bloom. When the black car parked for the third time, she already knew who it was. But even so, her heart raced. Colleen stepped out with a bigger, more confident smile, as if her presence had already become home to him. After buying some bananas, this time without saying a word about the price, Colleen approached the counter and spoke in a light but firm tone. "Today's too beautiful a day to be lost in the middle of the market." "I agree," Temilade replied, shy but smiling. "Temilade, would you accept to see a special place with me?" She hesitated. The invitation was kind, but her soul, marked by the pains of the past, reacted with caution. Still, there was something about Colleen, an honesty in his eyes, calmness in his gestures, that made her lower her guard even if just a little. After taking a deep breath, she nodded with a nearly whispered yes. Colleen smiled. They set a time to meet, and after her workday, there he was, as gentlemanly as ever, waiting for Temilade, who looked radiant. And so unknowingly, the two began one of the most memorable and most dangerous days of their lives. The path to the waterfall was a dirt trail, surrounded by tall trees that formed a natural tunnel. They walked slowly. Colleen felt so at ease by her side that he began telling her childhood stories, the hikes he used to take with his father, and how nature had always been his best counselor. Temilade listened in silence, fascinated. She discovered they had more in common than she imagined. Both found peace in birdsong. Both admired the simplicity of leaves falling in the wind. It was as if the universe had stitched their souls into the same fabric without them realizing it. But what neither of them knew was that they were being followed. Hidden meters away, Tariq watched with fierce eyes. Since they'd left the market, he had been following them along the dusty paths. Every turn, every laugh was like a dagger to his wounded pride. His face was red, his hands trembling. He wasn't thinking anymore. He was just feeling. And what he felt was pure hatred. "She won't trade me for that rich boy. She won't. I won't allow it." The trail to the waterfall was narrow, but Colleen knew every step. The water cascaded powerfully, forming a crystal blue pool surrounded by rocks and lush vegetation that seemed to breathe. Temilade had never seen anything so beautiful. She took off her shoes, sat at the water's edge, and let her feet touch the cold water. Colleen sat beside her. For a moment, only the sound of nature spoke. Then he took her hand, looked into her eyes with rare sincerity, and said, "Temilade, since the moment I saw you, something in me changed. I've met many people, but you are different. You have a strength the whole world needs to see." Her eyes welled with tears, not just because of the beauty of his words, but because of the truth behind them. No one had ever looked at her that way. No one had ever truly admired her. Not for her looks, not for status, but for who she was. Colleen leaned in slowly, She didn't pull away. Their faces were inches apart, eyes locked, hearts beating like anxious drums. But before their lips could meet, a scream tore through the air. "You're mine, Temilade," roared Tarik, emerging from the bushes, eyes ablaze. The shock was immediate. Temilade jumped to her feet, her body trembling. Kaelin instinctively stepped in front of her, his calm expression replaced by a protective stance. "Who are you?" Kaelin asked firmly. "I'm the man she loved," Tarik shouted, fists clenched. "And I won't let some damn rich boy steal her from me." Temilade tried to intervene. "Tarik, please, just go." "Shut up," he yelled. "You're mine. You were mine and always will be." Tension exploded in seconds. Kaelin moved to push him away, but Tarik came ready. The first punch was quick, instinctive, and Kaelin fought back. The two began to fight, stumbling over rocks and roots. Temilade screamed, cried, tried to separate them, but it was useless. Tarik's rage was wild, blind, and his only goal was to hurt. What should have been a moment of peace became pure chaos. With a brutal shove, Tarik threw Kaelin against a rock by the edge of the waterfall. The sound of the impact was sharp and terrifying. Kaelin collapsed, motionless, blood running from his head, his body lying still on the leaves. Temilade let out a scream so deep it seemed to echo through the entire valley. "Kaelin!" She threw herself beside him, trembling, trying to hold him, shake him, wake him up. "No!" she screamed, tears streaming, her hands stained with blood. "Please wake up, Kaelin, listen to me." Tarik, sweating and gasping for breath, paused for a second, realizing what he had done. The hatred turned to fear. He looked at the scene before him, Temilade kneeling over Kaelin's unconscious body, screaming for help, and stepped back. Without a word, he turned and ran down the trail, disappearing among the trees. Temilade was left alone, desperate, her heart shattered, her trembling fingers pressing against Kaelin's head wound. Every second felt like an eternity. The blood kept flowing. She screamed, cried, begged for help, but in that moment, all that existed was silence. There was no one else around. And what if that was the last look, the last touch, the last goodbye? Kaelin was still breathing, but for how long? Would fate take from her once again what her heart had only just begun to love? Want to know what happens in the next chapter? Then comment below. I'm waiting for chapter 2.